Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the LGBT Plus Business Forum. My name is Gerhard Stephan. It is my pleasure to be your facilitator for this afternoon. Now, before we move to the official opening, let me just give you some technical hints for this online event. Due to the size of the audience, it will not be possible that you ask questions live, but there is the chat functionality. So please, if you have any questions throughout the event, please always use the chat function, and you can post your questions there. This would also be the place to tell us if you have any technical issues. Please just raise it in your chat. Now let's have a brief look into the agenda. What will we experience this afternoon? First, we will have the opening words of representatives of PrideBiz, RBI, IBM, and the European Commission. After that, this will be followed by a keynote by Milton Pavlov from the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. Then we have a range of very exciting, high-caliber speakers on various aspects around enhancing LGBT plus perspectives, followed by Anna Podlesna from Profesia, who will present CEE data on diversity in the workplace. After that, we will break into 3 different, hopefully exciting agile work streams, each of them led by colleagues from RBI, IBM, and PrideBiz. And these work streams will be around corporate strategy, inclusive leadership, and straight allies. Finally, of course, we will bring the conclusions of these work streams again into the plenary. I hope and I'm sure we will have an exciting afternoon, and it is my pleasure now to hand over to the opening words to Ms. Astrid Van Wilhelm and Ferry Thierry, President and Vice President of PrideBiz Austria.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to know that so many people from all over Europe are taking part in today's LGBT Plus Business Forum. The LGBT Plus Business Forum bases on an initiative of PrideBiz Austria and IBM. At this point, also big thanks especially to Marijn Pijnenberg, who made this support possible. Since 2008, queer businesswomen and Austrian gay professionals have been working together intensively in order to make LGBT plus people more visible in the workplace. And to foster our engagement, we founded PrideBiz Austria to become the umbrella organization of queer businesswomen and Austrian gay professionals. As to the LGBT Business Forum, since 2012, we are inviting leaders of all lines to participate, to discuss, to exchange their experiences, and to receive new impulses for the implementation of LGBT plus diversity in their organizations. Today, Raiffeisen Bank International is hosting the LGBT plus Business Forum, and this obviously makes sense as Raiffeisen Bank International is present in many countries of the CEE region and is highly engaged in the topic of LGBT plus diversity. Now I will hand over to my colleague Ferry Thierry for more information on PrideBiz Austria.
Thank you, Astrid. As you already mentioned, we have been working intensively together since 2008 to make people and organizations understand why LGBT plus diversity is so relevant, to connect the organizations in order to benefit from their know-how and their experiences, to support individuals in their self-conception of being LGBT+, and to connect our members to foster professional and personal growth. As the cooperation between queer businesswomen and Austrian gay professionals has been fruitful for so many years, we have decided in 2019 to join forces and to create a common platform for our 2 organizations, so-called PrideBiz Austria. We have become the #1 contact point for Austrian companies and public institutions in Austria. So PrideBiz Austria is the umbrella organization for our existing joint projects, which is besides the annual LGBT plus business forum. We award the so-called meritus to companies and public institutions implementing LGBTI diversity management and inclusion, specifically regarding to LGBTI. Our 3rd project is the so-called Forschungspreis, a research award for academic papers on LGBTI issues, chosen by a jury of top-ranked scientists, happening again this November. Last but not least, we invite all the people engaged in LGBTI diversity in business to our annual Pride networking launch, which usually takes place on the day before the Vienna Pride in June. We would like to invite all the organizations and companies to join our platform, PrideBiz Austria, for example, as PrideBiz Allies. PrideBiz Ally organizations as our permanent cooperation partners. You are benefiting from know-how transfer and our communication channels to show your LGBTI engagement. One thing is for sure, together we will manage to make our society a better one. It would be wonderful if you decide to contribute to this open society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Astrid and Ferry, for your opening words. Now I would like to introduce to you the host of this event. We are actually today here in the premises of RBI. It's my pleasure to introduce the CRO, Chief Risk Officer and member of the board of RBI, Mr. Hannes Mösenbacher. Mr. Mösenbacher, I would like to ask you a question. RBI had a huge focus on diversity throughout the Diversity 2020 initiative in the last years. How does RBI include LGBT plus topics into this initiative, and why is it important to RBI?
Well, first of all, it's a pity that we can't meet in person, but I'm happy that we can reach out to you in this format, and thanks to all of them, of the people who made this possible. Thank you very much indeed. So coming back to your question, we are very happy as an RBI group that we are allowed and honored and privileged to host this event and this LGBTI. I have to still practice, because normally if I do these sort of speeches, you know, it's LGBTIQ+, but this time it's LGBTI form indeed. So this is really special for us. I appreciate very much. What is important for us when we talk about LGBTI, it is not just the head office here in Vienna. I think Vienna can claim that we have quite an open-minded and diverse society already in place. But we are acting in over 13 countries, from Belarus to Albania, from Russia to Czech Republic. This is the area where we are allowed to serve our clients, and it's very important for us and has a very high relevance. As said by my previous speakers and guests here, to create the awareness that people are having very difficult and demanding times if they cannot openly talk about their sexual orientation, this is a real pity. And we are not exploring the full potential of human being. So as said, you know, I would like to encourage all of us to be here open-minded, and that it is something as normal as everyday life in an open-minded community and society. With an RBI, take this diversity really serious. You can see it, I'm standing here, I was supporting, and I was really very emotional and touchy when we were raising the rainbow flag, and on the many other occasions where we can demonstrate that we believe, and that we are not just believing, but that we're also delivering on this topic. This time diversity has a clear focus. I would also still like to add that diversity for us is diversity along the age, along race, along age, religion, and of course goes without saying also along sexual orientation. And we are proud. We are proud because since 2018 we have a special group of people in praise. But the colleagues of the LGBTIQ community and straight allies really working closely together to make the whole story and this topic a topic, and that's in our organization, and that we discuss and that we embrace it, and that we see how we can develop it further on a daily basis. And creating also an working environment which is just enhancing RBI's group culture. It is proven, and it goes without saying, that is increasing the productivity, the loyalty, and also the joy of life and working in such an environment. Goes without saying that the full board of RBI Group is supporting the raising of the awareness when it comes to the sexual orientation, and having a working environment established where people can work in an authentic manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannes Mösenbacher. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Patricia Neumann, Country General Manager of IBM here. IBM is the co-initiator of the Business Forum. And actually, what I would like to ask you, Ms. Neumann, IBM has been intensively engaged in LGBT plus diversity over the last years. Which challenges do you currently see at IBM with regard to sexual orientation and identities?
So thanks for the question. First, thank you to you, Mr. Mösenbacher, for hosting us here for RBI today, making it possible that we are together, even if not physically. So yes, IBM has a very long track record on a history which makes us IBMers very proud on this topic, because it's not just talking, it's really about doing things. And the current topic, maybe, which is really recent topic, what we are very proud on to work on, is, you know, when you select in an official register in a country, you can select most of the times male or female. And our intention is really to open up here, and we're working in our own HR systems to make this possible. We are very happy that the Ministry of Interior recently submitted a decree which allows now to select between male, female, interdiverse, or even give no information about this choice. So I think that's something where we, IBM, can be a role model, and at the same time, coming from the IT industry, also make it possible that in all these systems, in a state or in companies, this adjustment is possible. Other topics close to LGBT plus is like, for example, gender-free bathrooms. That's what we have introduced in several countries, also here in Austria. So it's really gender neutral, what we offer in our location for employees. Very recently, we issued for all employees in the German-speaking countries a guide for gender-neutral language. And when I read through the guide the first time, I was really impressed how many pages it really needs to have a careful language using a gender-neutral language. So those are two examples what we are doing currently in IBM. And for today, embracing the LGBT plus challenge or let's say initiative for the CEE countries is something very special. As a RBI and IBM, we are both operating in an international environment, so we do have a lot of experience here. And I would like to make one thing very clear. IBM has one diversion and inclusion policy, and that's valid for all countries where we operate in. And of course, we adhere to legal requirements, but within IBM, we are very proud that all the values and all we are doing, we want to bring to every country in the world. So thank you for everyone who is joining today, because that's a strong commitment. You're spending your time here, and I'm very interested in looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neumann, also for your encouraging words, and good to hear what is happening at RBI, that this has a strong focus. Now, we are very honored to have Ms. Irena Muzova actually here as our guest via the phone. I hope it works. Ms. Muzova is Director of Equality and Union Citizenship at the European Commission. Ms. Muzova, do you hear us over the phone?
Yes, I do hear you over the phone.
That is wonderful. Good that the connection works. May I ask you a question, Ms. Muzova, also as the start? What are the main topics the EU Commission is currently working on concerning the LGBT plus workplace?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to your conference. I would indeed be very much feeling better, so should I be able to be with you in Vienna like last year during the Pride, European Pride season. But let me then speak about the topic that you have just advanced. First of all, flagging that the diversity is a core value of the European Union, and the motto "United in Diversity" is a commitment that is at our heart of all our political work. And our President, Ursula von der Leyen, clearly stated last month that equality was one of her top priorities in her first State of the European Union speech. And let me quote from her: "I will not rest when it comes to building a union of equality, a union where you can be who you are and love who you want, without fear of recrimination or discrimination. Because being yourself is not your ideology, it's your identity, and no one can ever take it away." So this is somehow, in a nutshell, already showing that equality and non-discrimination is the basis of the strong foundation in the European Union. The treaties on European Union identify the value of equality as foundational, and they confer competence on the European Union to combat discrimination based on sex, including gender equality, identity, racial or ethnic origin, religion or belief, disability, age, and sexual orientation. So they require as well from us in the Commission and from the European Union in general to mainstream non-discrimination in all its policies, processes, and programs. And when I have to reply your question a bit more concretely, so we have both effectively on these foundations. We have proposed the legislative framework, like an equal treatment directive. We have proposed, and we are in the train of implementing wide-ranging policies to advance equality for different groups, both at national and European. And we are also using the search component alongside with the legislative and policy work, and this is mainly in terms of the funding. So we provide the support to the civil society through the various funding programs, and these funding translates into the policies via the tangible results on the ground, empowering European Union citizens and safeguarding their fundamental rights and promoting justice. Many concrete projects have been funded, also with the focus on non-discrimination of the LGBTI in the workplace, and this is one of the topics of your discussion today. So, for example, Croatian project Work Equality for All that focuses on the creation of an inclusive and fair environment for LGBTI employees and job seekers and increasing the awareness of labor rights is one of them. And I should mention as well that as a part of the list of action to advance LGBTI equality under the previous mandate of the Commission, we have supported the member states, civil society organizations, but also businesses to effectively combat discrimination, hate speech, and hate crime. So we have supported member states, for example, through the number of high-level groups, organizing good practices exchanges, and by sharing knowledge and conducting research. We have supported civil society organizations at the European level, at the national level, through the former Rights, Equality and Citizenship program. And just to give you some figures, so the European LGBTI civil society organization annually received an estimate of 1.6 million in operating grants. And through the small grants annually, on average, 2.1 million was awarded to the civil society organization at the national level. And in addition, more than 200 projects dealing with LGBTI equality have been supported by the Erasmus Plus program. So we are committed to continue to work closely with all stakeholders. We would like to strengthen our cooperation with the member states in order to encourage them to strengthen their policies and legislation to combat the discrimination and promote diversity and inclusion. We also would like to continue to support the civil society organization in order to help them also to contribute to the legislative proposal and policy development, and in order to facilitate for them the financial support to ensure continuity of their operations. And finally, we continue to work with the private sector to foster diversity management and to ensure that the workplace remains inclusive for all. Maybe I should, before concluding, to point out the final report on the list of actions to advance LGBTI equality, which we published on the 15th of May, where we highlight all the actions implemented not only in 2019, but all the progress made over the last 4 years by the Commission and the Member States and stakeholders together, and to thank our commitment to prepare the first ever LGBTI plus equality strategy by Commission before the end of this year, with the main objective of the strategy to mainstream LGBTI plus equality in all other policy areas. So to ensure that the LGBTI plus equality dimension is included in design and implementation of the European policies in all different areas. So the strategy will build on this previous list of action, as mentioned, and also on the recent Fundamental Rights Agency LGBTI survey. I understand that this survey will be more in detail presented by Mr. Pavlov from FRA. So just to mention two very important figures from this survey, where 1 in 4, that means 26 respondents, hides being LGBTI at work, and 2 in 10, so more than 20%, felt discriminated against at work, and the year before the survey. So these specific results, of course, vary across the different countries, but they should be addressed at the European level. So that's why the strategy will build up on these figures coming from the Fundamental Rights Agency survey, and also on the outcome of the joint conference we have organized last year together with the Finnish presidency.
Ms.
Muzova. Yeah, I will wrap up very short. Yeah, so we will definitely dedicate a very important focus in our strategy on the LGBTI plus discrimination in employment. So it will be very important part, and also our support to the diversity charters. That means promote the business case of diversity in all of the member states in the future. So I will stop here. Just saying that with great interest I listened to the best practices in IBM with my predecessor speakers, and we are looking forward to work together with the business community for more inclusive and diverse work environment for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irena Muzova, for being live here with us, live from Belgium, and for sharing the perspectives of the European Commission on LGBT plus topics. Well, actually, before I now hand over to the keynote speaker of this event, I would like to remind everyone also to use the chat functionality if you have any questions to any of the speakers that are following. We will not be able probably to answer all the questions that come in right now during the event because the time is limited, but we will take the chance to provide you with answers after the event. So please use the chat functionality. But now it is my pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Mr. Milton Pavlov from the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. Milton is working in the FRA on many topics of social inclusion and integration, hate crime, extremism, racism, discrimination, and also, of course, in this context on the rights of LGBTI persons in his role as the project manager of both LGBTI surveys that have been done 2012 and 2019. And Mr. Milton Pavlov will present to us a map and a guide for the long way towards LGBTI equality. Milton Pavlov, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm honored by this invitation. Starting from figures, as Irena Muzova has indicated, imagine being an LGBTI person or being a family member and having a chance of 40% of being harassed in a year of life, on the street, in public space, public transport, or on the internet. So this is a major concern, a major issue we have to tackle as a civilized society. I'm going to be brief. I don't know if we can go to the next slide because I'm not managing the presentation. The purpose of the presentation is to show you what the situation is, to have a map of what is happening, as I realize also, especially in the workplace, and what we can do to have a guide, how can we navigate on our long path towards LGBTI equality. Even with difficulties, we are getting there. Next slide, please. So there are some key messages I want to keep already up front and we need to keep in mind to tell you. First of all, overall, we see that we see very little progress, if any, to have been achieved in the last 7 years between the two surveys. Still, we have found some very interesting results. The most concerning, worrying result here, as mentioned also before, is that fear, discrimination, violence is still persisting, is a daily reality for many LGBTI across Europe. There have been many different developments in different countries, different experiences in relation to fear, victimization, and openness of being LGBTI. A lot of the actions that you just mentioned before and others have mentioned were about encouraging LGBTI persons to be themselves in public life, in social life, at the workplace. This has happened to a certain extent. It comes at a cost. Another interesting result that among all LGBTI groups, intersex and trans people respondents in our survey suffer the most. If the general Eurobarometer surveys show that there's a slow but gradual increase of social acceptance in the EU of LGBT persons, this is not so for intersex and trans persons, not so much. Second important element when I'm going to present briefly the results, or some key results that are relevant for this forum, is that the EU average we're going to show hides a lot of differences. There are different situations in different countries. Each country has a very different profile. This survey is an eye-opener, provides the possibility, the chance to see better, to see with the clear eyes, with lucid gaze, and understand what are the challenges and the challenging areas, where there has been improvement, where you can build on, and what needs to be done. For example, we do know where the situation has improved according to LGBTI respondents, that legislation promotes, brings progress, support of public figures brings progress, helps people being more visible and participating in public and social life. Most and foremost is visibility, participation in public and social life. That is the main driver of change, driver of progress in EU societies, according to the survey respondents. In countries and respondents that have perceived a deterioration, we asked them why this happened to their opinion, and they told us that's negative public discourse, mainly by political parties and figures, or lack of law enforcement, which is a main issue in all countries, not just the countries that appear to be more negative towards LGBTI persons. We have a problem with the police throughout Europe. Lack of support, civil society, and therefore difficulties in participation, in visibility in public life. Another important element, we focused on youth. For the first time, we surveyed respondents that were, even as we speak, at school, between 15 teenagers, 15 and 17 years old. They have given us very interesting results. Why the survey has shown little or no progress in many countries for deterioration in the last 7 years, the survey has shown through education, the experience of young people, that there's a slow, gradual progress across generations, in the decades, in a century, while the situation is still harsh, where you still have bullying, a lot of discrimination and victimization, even in education, you can see that the support increases even slowly and gradually across generations, and this is something we can build on. Last not least, we have not gathered, of course, data on the coronavirus pandemic that was not in our lives last year when we conducted the survey, but we do understand that the harsh situation of many LGBTI people that had already difficulties to make ends meet, to live in a non-hostile environment, or to find or keep a job, has become even worse after the pandemic. And we do know that the situation is much, much more critical for trans and intersex, for example, that they suffer from homelessness more than other groups. Next slide, please. I'm going to run briefly to some results. Please continue clicking. I will tell you to stop. Thank you. This is a very large survey. This is the largest ever survey globally on LGBTI persons. And it also concerns a very large, wide spectrum of themes. I do invite you to go on our website and read the report, but also play with our data explorer. You can go in depth in countries, situations, areas of life, in different LGBTI groups through our data explorer. This is a very interesting tool. This is also the breakdown through the different LGBTI groups that did participate in the survey. For the first time, we had a considerable sample, the largest ever in an EU survey or global survey of intersex persons, 1,600 persons. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are the key issues that overall we have little progress. Now, this is an indicative comparative example of the results between the two surveys, 2012, 2019. More LGBTI respondents feel discriminated in any area of life this time, more than in 2012. The situation has deteriorated. It's interesting to see that the situation has deteriorated, especially for what concerns some groups and trans persons. this also reflects the fact that people claim the right not to be discriminated. They are more visible than before, as you will see, and also they claim their right to participate in social life and also, for example, in employment, or to go out. As you see, the higher percentage, the higher rate of discrimination is felt in social life, when somebody goes out to eat, drink, or in a club. So this is an interesting situation that indicates, please, next slide, please, indicates that while the discrimination in the workplace remains high, this is not per se a discouraging result. This is a make or break moment, because this is a moment where some groups claim the participation in public life, where you need to even strengthen the actions you have in place to promote participation and to protect from discrimination. Therefore, as also the Commission prepares in the LGBTI strategy to strengthen even more the protection from equality by equality bodies of LGBTI persons. Next slide, please. As you can see, the situation at workplace is more or less the same, at the same level, with a larger percentage for trans persons between the two surveys. Next slide, please. And as we can see, we have a slight but an increase of reporting discrimination in the competent equality bodies. Still, the percentage is very low, 17% is very low. So therefore, we have to strengthen the support and protection by equality bodies. And we have a very high level of awareness of the existence of equality bodies. In some cases, one can see from national surveys that they're higher than the general population. So LGBTI persons tend to be more informed about the rights to be protected from discrimination and are aware of the existence of equality bodies with differences among countries, which is a considerable and notable issue that we have to tackle as the European Union and the national authorities. But still is something to build on. Still, with this level of awareness, they do not report discrimination in employment, and that's a critical issue. Next slide, please. Click again, please. Those above 18 years old are more open than before, more open than 2012. As you can see, they now more than half, or about half, of adult LGBT respondents are open about being LGBT, while the same percentage was 36 in 2012. This shows an increased level of openness, visibility, and also claim of willingness, of desire of participation in public and social life. Next slide, please. Still, fear, violence, discrimination is a very worrying reality. Next slide, please. And as you can see, we have differences among countries, but people are afraid of being in public, of showing their social orientation, sexual orientation. And this is also very different in different groups. As you can see also from the chart on the right, gay and bisexual men feel more this fear of being discriminated, of being victimized because of their visibility of gender expression and of sexual orientation expression. Next slide, please. Similarly, we have high level of violence suffered by respondents, especially trans and intersex respondents. And the main reason for this, but the most of them, of these incidents, are not reported to the competent authorities, are not reported to the police. The main reason for this is the fear of a homophobic, transphobic reaction by the police. I remember some years ago we interviewed police officials in a qualitative research. And we do know that the problem with the police is that they do reflect the situation in society. They do feel themselves the pressure of society. Therefore, there's a lack of protection of support and support of LGBTI victims of violence. Next, please. Harassment. As said in the beginning, there's a very high level percentage of harassment yearly in a year of life. 2 in 5 respondents were harassed in the year before the survey. That's a very concerning, worrying, alarming result. Some groups more than others, like trans, lesbian, and intersex persons. Next, please. Next, please. Here you can see a comparison between 2012 and 2019, and you can see that the avoidance of places has change in some countries has improved in some countries like Malta, like Czech Republic, and Netherlands, like Sweden, like Austria, like Finland, and has remained the same or deteriorated in other countries like Poland or like Bulgaria. So there is a different profile per country, so each country has to face and deal with different challenges. Next, please. Similarly, about holding hands with same-sex partner, avoiding of doing so for fear of being attacked. This is a different situation in some countries where we had improvements. In other countries, the situation is the same or has deteriorated, like Hungary and Poland, or Cyprus and Latvia, and Croatia. Next, please. So here is an example of a result we can obtain through our data explorer, comparing Austria with the EU average, where you can see that the situation is better in Austria than at the EU level of the 28 member states. Next, please. Here you can see also the reporting rates of violent attack to the police because of fear of homophobic and transphobic reaction. This is the percentage of victims that do not report to the police because of fear of this reaction. It is completely different, as you can see, in different member states, higher than all in Northern Macedonia and Latvia. Next, please. Main area of fear for being assaulted is public space, of course. Next, please. And we asked respondents whether they think the government, the country they live in, combats effectively prejudice and intolerance. And you can see completely different percentages in different member states, indicating again, highlighting where we need to pay more attention. Next, please. Next slide, please. Next, please. So here you can see in which countries the respondents said that the situation has improved, like Ireland, Malta, Finland, Portugal, Lithuania, and countries in where the respondents told us that the situation has deteriorated, like Belgium, Netherlands, Hungary, France, Poland, Bulgaria, Slovakia. Next, please. This is where the violence has increased, stayed the same or decreased in the country they live in. So again, you see that the situation has deteriorated according to respondents in France, Poland, Spain, Italy, UK, Belgium, Netherlands. As you can see, there are countries that have taken major steps, legislation, policies in favor of Lgbti equality, but still they suffer from safety concerns. So it's not a black and white picture, it's not the West against the East. Each country has the specific challenges to face and to need to see clearly and not to categorize countries only. We need to support countries, and this is what we do also in the Fundamental Rights Agency. The situation has improved a lot in countries that have taken important steps also in the public sphere, debating about LGBTI rights, about the need for equality, like Malta, Ireland. And we have also good situation in other countries like Czech Republic, Czechia, Finland, and Slovenia. Next, please. And as I said at the beginning, next, please. We know that new laws, visibility, participation are the main factors of change, drivers of change. This is a comparison between Austria and the EU. Next, please. Similarly here, these are the negative factors that move the situation in a negative way. As you can see, in Austria, we do follow the trend of the European Union that says that the main problem is usually the public discourse by politicians or political parties. This is what the respondents told us. Next, please. Next, and I'm going to finish with that in order not to take too much time from this very interesting event. As I said, we found, please click, we found a positive long-term trend in education. We asked young people today and other respondents whether at school, when they were at school, they felt that someone supported, protected, or promoted the rights of LGBTI persons. As you can see, this was hardly ever the case for older generations or very small percentages, while today 60% of young people, of teenagers in school, in education, told us that this was the case, that someone supported them during their time at school. Next, please. Similarly, we asked whether the education at any point, the curriculum, addressed LGBTI issues, equality. Still, it's a very negative situation. Half of the schools in the European Union do not deal with this at all. But it's better than before, in the sense that there's a good majority, good fragment of about 30% that do address this in a positive or in a balanced way. So with this, I want to leave you and open maybe the discussion. I want to tell you that this also gives us a guide about where should we work on. We should work more on supporting participation at workplace and visibility in the public space, strengthening equality bodies, strengthening those who support participation and protect from discrimination, like the activities and initiatives you mentioned before, and work on young people and education, which is the laboratory of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Thank you very much for the statistic, which is somehow still shocking. So it shows that there is still a long way to go to LGBT plus equality. Now let's move over to the next part of the agenda, which is a sequence of really exciting speakers who will inspire us on the topic enhancing LGBT plus perspectives. May I again ask all the presenters please to keep your time frame of not more than 8 minutes so that we really can keep the schedule. The first speaker to start with is Christian Noel, General Manager of IBM Global Business Service for the DACH region. Christian is a long-term straight ally and speaks up for workplace diversity during his many years at IBM, even in more challenging markets like Central Eastern Europe. So over to you, Christian. Floor is yours.
So, Gerd, thank you very much for the introduction, and I appreciate being here. So, I'm a straight ally, and I've got a badge to prove it, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on to explain what it means to have a badge. And I'm out, and that's also important, because being an ally is about actually walking the talk. Again, let me come back to that. I've been a straight ally for a long time, and really because I believe in equality. I believe in fairness. I believe in everybody being able to bring themselves to work and to be themselves in society. I've had gay and lesbian friends for most of my life, as long as I can remember, and I've never really differentiated. That doesn't make a difference. It makes no difference whatsoever, in fact. But I've seen in the workplace that it can make a difference. It can make a real difference. I have friends, and I even have family members who are not out or are out, and the tremendous difference it makes between being out and being not out. Having to think twice, having to think each time, what did I tell that person? What story did I make up about why I haven't got any pictures of my holiday, etc. And we all know those scenarios. But there are many, many more things that are unfair in the world today. The world isn't a level playing field. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what a straight ally can do for the population. And how a straight ally can collaborate. And it starts really with understanding, actually spending a bit of time listening, absorbing, understanding the issues, wherever one is. And the issues are different. I've worked in many different places in IBM, from Africa, Central and Eastern Europe, UK, Germany, you name it. And the issues are different by society. Not just because the legal framework is different, and we heard from Milos about some of the differences there, but we've also, there are societal differences, acceptance differences, as well as the very hard things like the laws. So first of all, a straight ally really is about listening and being very receptive to the population. A straight ally is also about walking the talk, being out there and actually doing something. And I've got a few examples I wanted to just give. And I started off quite a few years ago, actually in the Oberdonaustrasse, working in IBM in Austria. And there, the legal framework, it's pretty good. We're just about there. Is it a completely level playing field? Not quite, but nearly. However, the level of awareness within our company wasn't there. And it's something which we continually work on. And you heard from our general manager around that topic in particular. So what did we spend our time on? Simply awareness, helping managers, helping other employees, setting the tone, making them aware of situations. And the number of times when a straight ally comes to somebody and says, have you thought about it in this way? The number of times they turn around and say, I'd never even thought of that. I'd never even thought about the fact that if I ask somebody, hey, what did you do at the weekend? that actually I could be creating a scenario or a situation that actually is difficult for somebody. And that's just the easiest example. Imagine all the other things that can happen. If an employee is sick, for example, making the automatic assumption that it's a heterosexual partner that's going to look after them. These kinds of things can be difficult, but with education can make a huge, huge difference and can make a huge relief and can make life so much better for our employees so they can all be themselves. And when you're yourself, you can contribute the maximum to the company. Now, I've also had interesting times. The company moved me voluntarily, I have to say, to Dubai, where I was in charge of a business in the Middle East and Africa. There, it's quite a different model. I did have to take a step backwards. I had to delete some things from Facebook because in order to live in that society, one has to be adapt to the society we live in. Okay, we're a guest. But I was really proud of IBM because there, as a straight ally, I could operate in what we call the embassy model. The embassy model says that, okay, outside, maybe we have to be adapted to what society says, but inside the company, we can be totally open. And so we create the embassy kind of concept whereby when you walk in through the door of our company in Saudi, in Dubai, and in various other countries, you can be yourself, whilst we fully accept that we don't encourage any employee to break the law or to endanger themselves or others in what they do, be they a straight ally or be they a member of the community. So those are slightly more difficult things. I've also spent 6 years in Prague, looking after the business for Central and Eastern Europe, the 22 countries that make up that very varied and culturally diverse marketplace. So there we have Russia, we have the various countries like Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and of course we have the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia. Very, very exciting and very different. But again, one knows that when one hits the actual mark, things can get a little bit difficult. In Poland, I had some very heated debates where employees were shouting at me, and obviously also members of outside of IBM were shouting at me, sending me letters with quite significant threats about the behavior that I was exhibiting as a straight ally and how this was absolutely not aligned to society. That's when you have to ask yourself about your core values, and you have to stand straight and you have to say, am I going to bend? Or am I actually going to stand straight and support the community? And I'm so proud in our centers in Wrocław, Krakow, and obviously Warsaw to be there as the ally who's supporting the teams. And the degree of interaction one gets is tremendous from the teams, because there is no such thing as a country without an LGBT plus community. It doesn't exist, and we all know that. It's just a matter of is that community allowed to live in peace and to give their maximum contribution to society and to companies. That makes a real difference. We also have to clean our own house. We did an audit of all of our countries in CE to say, do we give the same benefits to everybody where it's legally allowed? Lo and behold, we found some differences, which we corrected, and that's great. And so these are the kinds of things that we've done. I'm very proud that we were the instigator, and Patricia mentioned at the beginning, of a very small but significant item, which is unisex toilets available for anyone, not with a male symbol, not with a female symbol. And that's rolled out from our actions as a group of LGBT straight allies throughout the whole of the IBM community worldwide. The same logo is now on every bathroom door throughout the IBM corporation. Education is a key part, of course, but also BRGs, the employee resource groups where we bring employees together, the ongoing discussion, but also working with governments. In the Czech Republic in particular, I was privileged enough to talk to the Prime Minister about the inequality in the Marriage Act, and things are moving. It's a tedious process, it's a tough process, but again, as a straight ally, I can stand there and have the discussion, a dispassionate discussion that says, this is good for business. It's not because I favour one part of the community or another, it simply makes sense. And that was a great discussion we had. It was a difficult discussion we had, and it was a great support from so many other companies who joined me in that as I led the team of industry to go and lobby the government. So this again is part of a role of a straight ally. So what does a straight ally get out of this? Let me round off with, it's one of the best things I've ever done in IBM. I will continue to do it to the last day I work for IBM and retire, because it allows me to tune in, work with a community that is so rich, so diverse, so exciting, and every day I learn new topics. Every day a new topic comes up which we have to address. Every day there's something to do. But why is it so important? It's important because everybody, when they are themselves, creates environment, not only for ourselves, not only for society, but also for our clients, and it makes business sense. So let me come back to the badge. What are these badges? Well, IBM...
Christian, let's please come to an end.
Well, absolutely. We believe in certification, and we certify architects, project managers, and so on. Straight allies also get a badge so that we stand out and are absolutely visible in the whole of the IBM ecosystem in supporting our LGBT community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. That was really exciting and encouraging also to hear what straight allies can do. Thanks for sharing that. Next one in the row is Philipp Mezich from Croatia. He's a senior UX UI designer at Raiffeisen Bank International. Philipp originally comes from Zagreb before he moved over to Austria, and I think he can tell us firsthand how much worse the situation somehow in CE, specifically in Croatia, still is, but also what companies can do about it. Philipp, tell us more.
Hi everyone, thanks. So yes. What I want to talk to you about is the situation of the LGBT population in Croatia, especially in the context of the workplace. So I would say that in general, the workplace situation reflects the general situation in society. Even though Croatia has quite solid legislation on discrimination, on hate crimes. Even the life partnership is administered by this legislation. The general society is greatly opposing these values. So in everyday life, what you would see is, for example, hate comments appearing on the internet, in regards to media reports on any LGBT topic. And these hate comments will not only be calling out people various names, but also calling out to kill them, to attack them, and so on. And in fact, this does not stop on words only. You will very often have reports on beatings, on homophobic attacks on people, even to this day. So obviously this sort of atmosphere in the society will create fear in most of the members of the LGBT community, and as a consequence, the LGBT life in Croatia is completely invisible. So there is like this very thin but impermeable film, if you will, that surrounds the LGBT life, and straight people are, for the most part, even unaware of the LGBT people present in their life. They're not aware that they are their family members or friends or co-workers. They don't know about LGBT establishments or the existence of, various groups working out there and so on. In fact, if I may quote a Eurobarometer survey of the European Union from 2019 on discrimination, it says that in Croatia, about 63% of the population, or almost 2/3, will feel uncomfortable if they see two men holding hands in public or sharing kisses. And just for comparison, the European Union average is 34%, so around 1/3. To come to my own experiences, I also have experienced this in my life. Personally, I have been attacked twice. Once I had a brick thrown at me, at my head, just for kissing a guy I was dating at the time in public. Ironically, we were trying to make sure that no one would see us, but someone did threw a brick at us and luckily missed. Otherwise, I may not be sitting here with you today. The other experience is that I got hit with a fist in the jaw just by leaning my head on a guy's shoulder in public. In regards to the workplace, I've also had different experiences. For example, I worked in one company where I have been bullied by co-workers almost on an everyday basis, being called out faggot and other similar words, or having had the batch file installed on my computer that would make an image of a naked man pop up whenever I would start my computer just to make fun of me. But ironically, this all happened even though while living and working in Croatia, I was never out. So they never had any proof that I'm gay. They were just assuming, and this didn't stop them from bullying. I also worked in some very large international companies that brought in Western values, such as IKEA and Erste Bank. And even though there is really not only proclaimed care for diversity, but really initiatives that take care, people who work there, my colleagues, were still invisible. Any other gay guys, gay colleagues that I've met is actually that I met through dating apps and not through the actual workplace. For example, in IKEA, they're quite, I would say, quote unquote, drastic about this. They will ask you, one of the first questions that they will ask you in an interview for a job is whether you are aware that you will be working in a very diverse company, and whether you are willing to accept this. And even there, I had a colleague whose picture I saw in the internet, in the dating app, showing that most obviously he was gay, but his head was not showing. So nevertheless, I recognized him, but he didn't want to admit to it. So it was even a difficulty for him. So as a conclusion, the big question is, should these companies continue to have diversity initiatives if there is no one to talk to? I believe yes. Just like in 1972, we sent out a space probe Pioneer carrying the plate with an image of a man and a woman out into the space, and never really knowing whether this will reach any intelligent life form other than us. In the same way, the companies should continue to support LGBT community within the workplace, even though it may feel like they're speaking into an empty void. Especially big multinational corporations that have their branches in the Central and Eastern Europe should do this. Because they have power to change things. And the second point I would like to make is that on the long run, what would be ideal to achieve is not to have initiatives, not to have politics, but rather to have the culture instead. So the culture of acceptance, the culture of tolerance, the culture of diversity. One other big thing, and I think this is more impactful even in CE countries, is that companies like this also work on the external visibility, meaning that mostly through their campaigns, they campaign for LGBT in Croatia in the last couple of months or even years. We've seen the rise of, for example, commercials that include LGBT characters and promote these values and picture them in a positive light. So that would be all from me, and now it's back to you, Gerhard. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Philipp, for sharing your own personal touching story. Next one is, I'm happy to hand over to Melinda Miklos from Hungary. She is the CEO of We Are Open. We Are Open is a non-profit organization that creates campaigns to promote LGBT plus inclusion, gender equality, and all areas of diversity and inclusion. As a Hungarian, Melinda can tell us about the situation in Hungary and how allies can support the LGBTQ community. So, over to Melinda.
Hello, thank you for having me. When we were preparing for this conference, we had some discussions, and I was asked to give you an overview about specifically the job market situation for LGBTQ people. And I can tell, like, if we had met a year ago, I would have talked about that there are 60,000 unfilled jobs in the private sector only. And then we know it from our national representative research that luckily 83% of the young soon-to-be job seekers would choose a workplace about which they know that is open, diverse and inclusive. Also, I have a story about the CEO of a multinational brand, a multinational partner of ours. Once he explained to me that when they are searching for a new person for their company, they are not only competing with the other telecommunications companies from Hungary, but they are also competing with their other branches in Berlin or in London. So if they would like to keep their colleagues, what they have to do is become an island within a country. This same company, what happened to them, once they joined a campaign of ours, we regularly bring companies and organizations to Pride March. This was not the habit of companies here before We Are Open was founded. And a few years ago, we brought there more than 100 CEOs from multinational brands and small companies marching together at the Pride and bringing there over 2,000 colleagues with themselves, bringing over 2,000 colleagues with themselves. And while we were walking there, a person from this company took a photo of the CEO and he posted it on his personal social media sites, and he said that he is so grateful and proud to be able to work at a workplace where their CEO is actually part of this movement and is marching with them. This also shows a trend to us. There is a research that I would like to bring into everyone's attention, which is from Edelman. It is a global trust barometer, and it proved that 75% of people expect business leaders to take the lead on social changes and do not wait for legislative changes to force them to do so. So this is a trend that I believe we could somehow sense before it became a global trend in Hungary, and this is because of the not very open and diverse climate in the country, I would say. So 7 years ago, we founded We Are Open with the idea to promote openness, diversity, and inclusion to everyone. And now we have over 1,000 companies and organizations as our members. Those are the ones who publicly committing to a manifesto with a logo, and many of them also participate in our public campaigns. I started my talk with saying that what I would have said to you a year ago about the labor market, and I do believe that now we have to be conscious about what is happening and how this pandemic era impacts different minority groups. And first of all, I would like to start with debunking a myth. There is this tagline that we are in this together, but in fact we are not in this together. Yes, the pandemic is everywhere, but its consequences differ. We cooperated with 4 wonderful NGOs in Hungary to put together a report based on data and evidence to show how the pandemic impacts different minority groups, including the LGBTQ people, or for instance, women or the Roma community differently. What I can tell from the Hungarian point of view, and I believe this is somewhat an international trend as well, that LGBTQ plus people may have lost their jobs in a bigger percentage, because at least in Hungary, many of them worked in the sectors, namely gastronomy, tourism, the creative industry, that was highly hit by the crisis already. Also, LGBTQ plus people may suffer more from anxiety. Imagine the situation. We know this as a fact from some of our partners in Hungary, that They are open in the workplace, they feel safe there, this is a safe bubble for them, but the original town or village where they are coming from, there they are not out yet, and they don't have a supportive family, and they don't really have a support system, a part of their friends and workplace colleagues. So now many of them are forced back because of the closures to go to places where they may feel threatened, if not physically, then emotionally. So we would like to encourage all of you to take it into consideration how the pandemic hits different groups differently. If you would like to read this report, it's free and it's downloadable from our website. And another issue, pressing issue, is in Hungary that came in the time of the pandemic. However, they are not related. Maybe some of you have already heard about that. There was a legislative change introduced, and now it prohibits transgender and intersex people from legal gender recognition. So a phrase that is called birth sex got introduced, and from now on, people who are part of the trans or intersex community can face a situation whenever they have to show their ID cards, they will be forced to be out. So now we are working hard with some of our partners in Hungary to somehow empower and equip companies and organizations to support their current and future trans colleagues. Another bits and piece from the situation in Hungary. So there is a recent OECD report about the state of diversity in the OECD countries, and Hungary became the last on the list and decreased the most in the past 10 years. A list that showed how the people who filled out the questionnaire think that this environment where they live in is safe for certain minority groups. So this is the situation now, and I cannot emphasize enough how essential it is that not only LGBTQ plus people or other minority groups fight for themselves, but allies need to get involved, and we have to learn and understand how we can have the best and support openness, diversity, and inclusion with all of our tools. Maybe it's as part of a company or an organization, or maybe it is an individual act. What I can tell you from my personal experience, it can make a huge difference if companies join forces and act together. And this is what we kind of advocate for as part of our work. We create a coalition of businesses and organizations, and we campaign together. My background is in communication, so when we founded We Are Open 7 years ago, it was kind of a natural or intuitive idea to create campaigns. By campaigns, I mean public acts, when we not only as We Are Open speak up, but we involve tens and then later on hundreds of businesses to do the same thing and put competition aside and cooperate, talk together about the importance of LGBTQ inclusion. So this is, for instance, how we could bring 100 CEOs together to Pride March, how we could get a double page in Forbes magazine with a statement signed by 100 CEOs saying that they will be there, they support LGBTQ inclusion, and all similar gestures and campaigns. So I would like to wrap up with highlighting a few things from what I've already mentioned. Maybe I would start with, yes, okay, so if in Hungary there is an increasing anti-LGBTQ sentiment that is also fueled by legislative changes. In the meantime, the pandemic has a universally worse impact on every group that has already been discriminated against. In Hungary, it may mean a proportionally bigger job loss in the LGBTQ community, just to mention one example. Both of these trends tell me that the roles of companies shift dramatically, and employers and specifically business leaders should take the lead on change and cooperate with each other while doing so. Campaign participations and publicly visible, credible, and meaningful gestures do make a difference. We have the proof from Hungary. So I'm grateful for being here and being able to listen to all the amazing speakers and organizations. Thank you for having me again. And if I may grab this opportunity and mention it, now we are working in Hungary, but actually we believe that the model that we developed is something that we would love to offer to other countries within the region. So if you see the need for such a movement in your place of residence, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. We are working on creating a cross-country cooperation because we are sure that we can learn a lot from each other and we can find synergies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melinda, first of all, for sharing your story, for encouraging us, and for also telling us more about the efforts which you are undertaking. I'm happy to hand over to Gabriela Pacho from Romania. Gabriela is Director of Marketing at the Marketing Services Center Europe, IBM. And besides being a senior marketing leader and a trusted business advisor for the sales leadership team, Gabriela is also leading diversity and inclusion in IBM Romania with a focus on LGBT+ programs and initiatives. Gabriela, the stage is yours. Please tell us more about it.
Thank you, Gerhard, for your introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this LGBT Business Forum. I'm really grateful I can be here with you today, meeting you all virtually and having the opportunity to share with you a few of the initiatives that helped us driving in IBM in Romania an inclusive LGBT workplace. I have to start by telling you that working for IBM, a company where global workforce diversity is the cornerstone of the business strategy, a company with over 100 years history in leading diversity and inclusion, comes as well with a huge responsibility to build on that, on all of those great milestones achieved by IBM and continuously nurture a culture of belonging where employees can bring their authentic self to work every day. Our most successful initiatives span around 3 areas. First of all, very consistent LGBT inclusion learning and education programs for our managers and employees. These online education modules speak about the different issues, challenges affecting the LGBT community, IBM policies, practices, and expectations, but as well specific behaviors LGBT allies can adopt to help create a more welcoming and inclusive spaces at work, at home, and in the community. Our LGBT allies can earn the Ally Champion badge, as you heard as well Christian Noel talking about this, recognizing their efforts in driving an LGBT inclusive workplace through advocacy, engagement, and community service. Now, of course, in these education programs, we invite as well NGOs from Romania and different other institutions because it is extremely important to always consider and be aware of the country legal framework, laws, constitutional protections for LGBT citizens. Romania, still being a generally conservative country with regard to the rights of LGBT citizens, while we have to admit that significant changes have been made in LGBT rights legislation since 2000, the attitude of society towards LGBT citizens is still quite discriminatory, particularly in the rural areas. Therefore, our obligation to be aware of the external context, educate our employees about the external context, it's essential to be able to protect our employees 24 hours each day, not only when they are in the IBM office. The second key area of initiatives are what we do internally in IBM to drive employee engagement and inspire, energize our LGBT colleagues. The first ever business resource group in IBM Romania, formed 4 years ago, was the Employee Alliance for LGBT Empowerment that I'm leading as a proud straight ally, a small group of volunteers joining our efforts around the common interest, belief and goal to drive an inclusive LGBT workplace. Of course, during the last couple of years, more BRGs have been created in IBM Romania, focusing on different areas like gender intelligence, mental health, people with disabilities, cultural diversities, and so on. An important point I want to make here that instead of spreading our efforts in IBM in Romania in all of these small groups and working as individual groups, we brought together all these different DRGs under the umbrella of one Diversity and Inclusion Council supporting each other. And this council established a clear agenda of activities we drive together, bringing together IBMers from all the different locations we have in Bucharest, like Marketing Services Center, Client Innovation Centers, and different cities in Romania. So therefore, we are focusing on the mortar, what brings us together, leveraging the bricks, our differences, to build a very strong house where IBMers feel appreciated and welcomed, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. And just to give you two clear examples of such activities driving great engagement of employees, we have been recently doing, recently before the pandemic came, a screening of a short movie in the office called Abreast, directed by transgender Patrick Braila, about the life of a transgender person in Romania, a movie that fueled lots of questions, thoughts, and has been a great platform for learning and opening discussion across the team. Another example is inviting LGBT role models and leaders as part of our IBM Out Role Model program to talk at our events, seminars about, or video conferences lately about their experience in advancing career, inspiring and energizing our LGBT colleagues, providing clear examples of LGBT IBMers succeeding in their career. And last but not least, the third key area of activities focusing on are the external engagements. And why is that so important? Because we can do the greatest things in our workplaces, but that's not enough. Employees need to be protected, not just in the workplace, but in society in general. So companies, and what we can observe, that companies and institutions in Romania are at very different stages of embracing diversity and inclusion. Therefore, we feel the need to shift the focus and energy on sharing best practices from IBM's long experience and expertise. For the past few years, we have been partnering with different NGOs, commercial institutions, enterprises, academia, and governmental organizations to raise awareness and promote the adoption and implementation of diversity and inclusion policies in businesses throughout Romania. So as a proud IBMer and straight ally, I'm working each and every day with the extended community, the Diversity Charter in Romania, to advance workplace equality in Romania and create a society where human rights are not negotiable. And we know that only together, joining our forces, we can create an open society where human rights are respected and all citizens are provided with equal opportunities. So thank you very much once again for inviting me and for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, for encouraging us on this. Next one will be, last one actually in the row of this series will be Dragana Todorovic from Serbia. Dragana is the Executive Director of ERA, which is the LGBTI Equal Rights Association for Western Balkans and Turkey. This is an umbrella association of 67 LGBTI organizations from Albania, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Serbia, Slovenia, and Turkey. And Dragana, of course, can tell us more on the situation on the Western Balkan. Dragana, over to you.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for inviting me at this important event. As you have mentioned in the introduction, we are a regional network organization of 67 LGBT organizations from 9 countries. And we work on improving and advancing the position of LGBTI people through different kinds of work, including advocacy activities, capacity development activities, research activities, giving small grants to LGBTI organizations, and also public campaigning activities. And as many of you probably know, especially the Western Balkans region is probably one of the most dynamic regions in the world currently, because of the different reform processes that are currently taking place, mostly due to the EU integration processes. And of course, this is also reflected on the advancement of LGBTI rights, or shall I say more on the policy and legislation level. So as also Philipp mentioned, we are also covering Croatia, so I also have to agree with everything that Philipp has said. We throughout the region, we more or less have proper legislation. Of course, there are still some gaps. For example, same-sex partnership laws in most of the Western Balkans countries, then gender identity laws and so on. But overall, things are improving when it comes to the legislation level. However, these reform processes are not always translating to the lived realities of LGBTI people in the Western Balkans. We've seen some of the data that Miltos was presenting, and we could see, if you were paying close attention, that Serbia and North Macedonia are always kind of significantly worse off on most of the questions that were presented. And indeed, this is really the case throughout the region, and research consistently shows that every third LGBTI person in the Western Balkans has been a victim of violence, that on average, every second LGBTI person has been a victim of some form of discrimination. And also a prior research that we have done on the general population attitudes has shown that on average over 70% of the general public in the Western Balkans unfortunately still think that homosexuality is a disease, and a lot of people also think that LGBTI people should be punished for being LGBTI. In addition, and what's important for our topic today, we have also conducted recently a pioneering research together with the World Bank, measuring the socio-economic dimensions of LGBTI exclusion. And the results are really, really troubling. What we managed to find out is that only 20% of LGBTI people are fully open at the workplace. We have also managed to find out that approximately almost 50%, actually more specifically 46% of LGBTI people have either witnessed or experienced some form of harassment at the workplace. We have also, because we were also comparing the data with the data on general population to see if there are also differences between LGBTI and the general population when it comes to the experiences in the workplace and employment. And we have found out that LGBTI people are 5 times more likely to change their jobs in the last 12 months because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Also, approximately 30% of them have had to leave their job either permanently or to go on some kind of a medical leave or similar. And also an interesting finding, and also important for our topic today, is that the majority of LGBTI people, in comparison to the general population, work in the private sector, while the general population in a much larger percentage works in the public institutions and public companies. So LGBTI people work more in the business sector. And due to all of these data that I've mentioned, which are just, providing some hard evidence on the lived realities of LGBTI people in the Western Balkans, and this is something that we've known as the movement all along, we have decided to launch, and this was 2 years ago, a regional economic justice program that involves several things, and among those things are working with the business sector on improving the workplace diversity. Unfortunately, in all of the countries of our region, we unfortunately don't have something that is similar to Pride Biz Austria or to We Are Open in Hungary, but hopefully through also cooperation, and thank you, Melinda, for offering to cooperate on this also with the other organizations. We will have the same in the future. We are also within this program working towards opening up an LGBT, like a regional LGBTI chamber of commerce. We are working on providing support to LGBTI community, improving their skills in searching for employment. And we are also working on establishing social entrepreneurship programs throughout the region. And also we are, as I mentioned, the World Bank, we are trying to also engage with major financial institutions such as the World Bank. And to wrap it up, having in mind what was already said and having in mind that the situation for LGBTI people in our region is really difficult, I think that businesses have a big role to play, and that cooperation with the civil society organizations is key for this. And as the speaker prior to me said, it's really important to support the LGBTI community, not only in the workplace, but also beyond the workplace. And I hope that also this event will provide further motivation for businesses to support the civil society and to cooperate more with the civil society organizations, especially in the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Thank you, Dragana, for sharing your perspectives on the situation in the Western Balkan. Well, that was quite an impressive overview on the situation across some of the countries. Now, our next focus topic will be diversity and inclusion at workplace. And I'm happy to introduce to you Anna Podlesna from Slovakia. She's an experienced CSR professional at Profesia. And Anna will introduce key data from the latest Profesia survey, which was done on the labor market in Slovakia and surrounding countries. Her presentation will reveal facts on the perception of diversity in the workplace. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this forum, and we are really happy to share our latest results or outcomes of the survey we conducted in Slovakia and surrounding countries. Next slide, please. My presentation will cover some introductory information about the survey. So who are the respondents, where are they from, what industries they come from. And then the survey had actually two parts. First part was focused on attitudes in the workplace, what people really think about 6 groups we investigated. And then second part of the survey, we had to break it into 2 parts. The second part of the survey was focused on discrimination people feel in the workplace when they belong to one of those 6 groups. Next slide, please. So some introductory information about the survey. Next slide. We have Profesia is a #1 job portal in Slovakia, but we also have portals where people can compare their salaries worldwide. And they are all connected via paylab.com. And this survey was conducted via this portal. And we put together a list of questions which we consulted with various experts. So we not only look at the LGBT plus community, but we also investigated some other groups. So as you will see in some slides, I will reveal all 6 groups. In some slides, I will focus just on LGBT plus community and break it into more countries. And in some slides, I will show total overview, what's the general respondent review. Next slide, please. So we were able in 2018 gather data from 9 countries and 24,000, almost 25,000 respondents. When we wanted to see what's the vibe in the society in 2020, we actually decided to focus more deeply on 3 CEE countries and compare it or benchmark it with Western Europe, and we also picked one Scandinavian country, and it's Finland. During this slide, I have to mention also, because I was really carefully listening to presenters before, and especially the European Union agency was very interesting for me, those data. That, for example, we also started to run this survey via our partner in Romania, but because of number of negative attacks, especially on LGBT community, we had to stop this survey. So we were not able to get a sufficient number of responses in Romania in 2018, and therefore they were not included in this survey. In Poland, we had to also stop the survey, so it was a very interesting experience for us due to some negative feedback from respondents, which our partner considered or recommended us to stop this survey and not to go deeper in these questions. In 2020, we also decided to extend number of questions which we asked about discriminations. So in 13 slides, you will not see data from 2018, but that's the reason, because we went more deeply and we wanted to hear from respondents what they think about the discriminations, because we learned something in 2018. So that's just a short explanation when you will be looking at the charts. Next slide, please. Age category, most of the respondents were between 25 and 44 years, which is the productive age. Next slide. Here you can see who were the respondents. We were really looking for mainstream or regular employees. So we have also detailed breakdown from the industries, but due to time constraints, I really just show you the position level. And you can see that we had skilled non-technical and technical workers, service employees, and also some answers were from lower and middle management and clerical workers. So that's the main group of respondents. Next slide, please. From the company size perspective, in 2020, we had more responses where people didn't indicate the company size. That's the column called null, and so we were not able to tell or to express whether the respondent was from small, medium, or large enterprise, but basically this was the decision, the division of respondents. Next slide, please. So let's start with questions. Due to time constraints, I just focus on the most significant findings. And if there are more questions, we can go more into data after the forum or the conference, and I can provide the answers. Next slide, please. We ask people whether they have real experience with working directly in their current workplace with a person who can be included in one of the following groups. And LGBT plus community is on the left side, the second column. You can see this is the overall response, that there is a slight increase in experiences in the workplace. So in 2018, there were almost 12% of respondents who answered that yes, we do. And in 2020, 14.4% respondents replied that they have this experience, that they have a colleague or know someone in the workplace who belongs to this LGBT plus community. Next slide, please. Here is a more detailed breakdown per countries, but I will just pull out the topic of this forum. Next slide, please. And here you can see detailed breakdown between countries Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, and benchmarking with countries of Western Europe and Scandinavia, Finland. So, because I was listening really carefully to previous speakers, Western countries are experiencing more attention in the workplace, that there are more people belonging or claiming that they belong to LGBT plus community. Next slide, please. This slide shows us what people who said that they have no real experience with any of those groups, what they think about people belonging to LGBT plus in the workplace. And the next slide will show the answer of people who said that they have experience. Can we return back to the previous slide, please? These people who said they have no real experience you can see that the mainstream of their answers is I don't know or I accept it. And if we shift it to the next slide, please. People who have experience, they have more positive attitude. Even we have higher percentages. I am glad that such people are here. And I just want to make a general conclusion that experience really opens the mind of people. And it's very important to share stories and discuss this topic in the workplace, because when people are more aware, they have more positive attitudes, and it's really helps to be more open, and everything what was even before mentioned via other speakers, that it comes true. Next slide, please. Second part of the survey was more focused, or list of questions we prepared was more focused on discrimination. But in this part of the presentation, in some slides, you will not see data from 2018. And the reason is that we added more questions, or we offered respondents more options in order to understand what they really think about the question. So next slide, please. Here are respondents who really responded to questions about discrimination. And you can see that we were able to gather more respondents and in 2018. Next slide. The question was, does your current employer proactively support workplace diversity? What is positive that we see more activity among employers discussing diversity in the workplace. As you can see, this chart shows you overall response of all respondents. What are the trends which in those countries we investigated? However, we still have a lot of people who say don't know, or more likely no than yes. Next slide. Have you personally felt that someone has discriminated against you and disadvantaged you in any way in your current workplace? You can see detailed breakdown among countries, and Hungary had the highest increase in percentage. We didn't ask this question in 2018 in other countries, but this is how someone who really claimed that he or she belongs to a certain group, how they felt the discrimination in general among those 6 groups we investigated. And now, go deeper, next slide. This was the list of options they could choose from. And because it has really many charts, so I just chose Slovakia, where we had 495 respondents who claimed or declared certain type of discrimination. And we offered them this list, and you can see what were the top 3 answers they provided. And it's the age, it's the opinion, and it's the sex, based on sex. However, because of this forum, I dig deeply into data. Next slide, please. And I chose people who answered based on gender, based on sex, and because of my sexual orientation. And I gathered all respondents together. So you can see what's the opinion among different countries. Based on gender, we didn't gather enough responses to have representative answers in the Czech Republic. But you can see the other countries. Next slide, please. We also asked them, please mark those points that express your personal experience when you felt discriminated against or in any way disadvantaged. And in general, we can say that people have to deliver more results or have to work harder. But as it was already mentioned here by the speaker from Croatia, there is also quite big number. At my workplace, people make fun or tell jokes about the LGBT plus community. So these are maybe things which should HR managers look at and consider what's happening in their workplace and what could be actually improved. Next slide, please. Now, it's not about how I feel as a respondent, but what are his or her observations. Have any of your colleagues felt that someone has been discriminating against him, her, at disadvantage him, her in their current workplace? Number of people who said yes is slightly lower comparing when they are talking about themselves. So it's somewhere on 7%. But if we go further, next slide, please. I look again to Slovakia data because of the list of questions. Top 3 answers are still the same, based on opinion, based on sex, and based on age are top 3. So the answers are top 3 are the same. Next slide. What kinds of discrimination, disadvantage have any of your colleagues experienced? And you can see the differences among countries. And again, what's very striking is the based on gender is in Western Europe 20%, the top chart, if you can look at it. So it's really like big difference among other countries. Next slide. Who has been discriminating against or derogatory towards you or your colleagues? This is very interesting to see that the answer in 2020 decreased in male-female superior and is higher in male-female colleague. This is also very important to look at individual workplaces and think what should be improved. Next slide. And this is the last slide I have in this presentation. And when we are discussing diversity, we many times hear leading professionals on top executive positions to share what policies and activities they develop as companies, but still people say, I don't know what impact workforce diversity have on the success rate on the company, and there are obvious other results from other surveys which prove that there is a positive result or positive impact. So I will conclude my presentation with this last slide and hope these findings will help some other participants of this conference to go deeper into their workplaces and improve the situation. We have more data from those countries I mentioned and more questions, but due to time constraint, I just chose the most important findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for showing these results. I think this was a lot of data. Of course, if we need to go more into detail, it is necessary to have a closer look at it afterwards. Well, this certainly shows that there is still a long way to go for equality. So the most important question now is what can we all do about it? So how can we contribute from different angles to improve the situation? And this is actually the question which we will tackle now in 3 agile work streams. The topics are work stream 1, corporate strategy. The second work stream will focus on inclusive leadership, and the third one on straight allies. And these are work streams where you are really asked to contribute with your creativity and with your ideas. Please join one of the work streams by clicking on the links which have been provided to you either by email in the calendar invitation, or you also find them in the chat. If you just click there, and one of our agile coaches will facilitate you through the discussion. Please, we have 45 minutes time in the work streams. Please be back at 3:35. I will put it into the chat as well. 3:35 back in the plenary. Have a good discussion. Hello everybody, welcome back to the plenary. I hope all the 3 groups have returned successfully to the plenary. I hope you had an interesting and fruitful discussion in the work streams. I mean, I got some informations here and there from some of the streams, but I'm of course curious to hear what your discussions were about and what the results were. So maybe can we have a short overview on the results? Let us start with workshop 1. Christine, would you want to tell us what happened in your work stream?
Thank you very much, Gerhard. Yes, it was indeed an interesting discussion. You might already see it. We coped with the corporate perspective, so we imagined what it would look like to be a board member and think about the case study. So the question we first focused on was, why is it important to address LGBTI expat issues as a company? And we came up with quite a few post-its. So is there special legal advice needed? Find legal solutions, e.g. local citizenship, etc. Citizenship of the talent matters in the CEE country, also the difference if the CEE country is inside or outside the European Union. Also consider the safety of the employees, a higher degree of responsibility of the LGBTI community. Is there a mobility department, and are they aware of LGBTI topics? Are the people out or not makes a huge difference how to handle the whole case. Additional measures or costs that might be covered, for example, travel costs of the partner, etc. Is there an alternative location or country that you might go to if it doesn't work out at all? What about the recognition of the marriage versus the heterosexual marriage recognition? And how does the local company see the LGBT situation? Versus, is it a global company where a philosophy is already in place or not? And if there is special legal advice needed, also consider perhaps, as we have it today, to work online and only go there from time to time. So the resources that we came up with to help the employees having a successful move is this special legal advice I already mentioned, and identify the helpers in the company. Perhaps this is the first time ever that you are in touch with these topics. Also consider a social support, so meaning the housing, the kindergarten, a job for unsire, so onboard the entire family and not only your employee. Give resources to the people to get the expertise. As I'm a board member or looking through the glasses of a board member, this is really important. And make sure there's one general policy for all the countries that you are active in, and also get the PR department on board. Communication is crucial. If you come up with this philosophy, it's important that you really communicate it to all your employees. And in case of a real threat, also involve the security and determine a policy that might be needed. And don't forget the informal networks. So there are informal systems and information in the LGBT networks. You should also consider look into these local information. So how to best balance the corporate philosophy with the legislative possible restrictions? You have to accept that you work for a global company, that there is a global philosophy, and when you join the company, you also have to adhere to this global philosophy. But don't forget that the outside might look different on the topic, so keep in mind what is going on outside. Also, an important post-it for us, as it is a post-it here, how is a family defined? What is a parent as definition versus a biological parent, and what is included then, what is covered when you think about medical coverage or pension? Are there benefits that are depending on the definition of a parent? Have a responsible department or have responsible departments and really have them empowered. And if you come across the restrictions which might happen, quite sure, perhaps there is a way to find a workaround or to find alternatives that the benefits are still allowed within these legal boundaries. Have a clear statement and stand behind it, not only as a company, but also as a person, and especially important as a board member. Start to work with the responsible governments or the politicians. Use your market power. You are an important player there. You have a power. Use it. And also get in touch with the local insurance companies or healthcare companies. They for sure are not so in touch with these LGBTI topics, so it's also important to make them aware and find solution. And last but not least, these also benefits not married couples or non-traditional couples. So there are quite some things and takeaways that we found from the perspective of a board member. Heide, can you take over directly and go into your working session and the outcomes of your working session?
Of course I will. Thank you so much, Christina. Good. In our working session, we had a different case study, let's say like that. It was the same case study, sorry, but different questions because we have the inclusive leadership. So that's why we in our working stream, we went with the first question, which steps need to be taken so you can ensure a safe environment for Anna in the C country as her current manager. So, and we thought always to think about from the current manager perspective. So we wrote the post-its like that. And in the first question would be like, as her current manager, I would give her the hint, first of all, to clarify with the local HR country if there are permissions, how are the permissions there to work and live, would be my first hint. The second thing would be, I will create with her a checklist in a meeting, going with her through all the check points that maybe would be good for her to think about. I will help her to create this checklist. Then, after we have the checklist, I will ask her if maybe I can help her with providing her the right persons to make that possible. I will try to give her as many contacts as possible. Also, I would support her and encourage her to consider all the pros and cons. That's a very important thing that we say should be also in a list. So I will also make sure if she declines, for it doesn't matter what reason, that there is not negative impact for her, which means I will be happy that she's there. And if she got here and if she got any trouble just because she denied, I will also try to support her and defend her position. At least it's her decision. If it's fine for Anna as her manager, I could also find out for her the C country, if the C country has any regulatory policy that needs to be followed. So I can also be helpful here, and if she agrees, I will help her. So I will also ask her to maybe take it into account to contact the local chamber of commerce to get information on the social challenges in the country. The second question has been for us, who do you need to get on board for the right information? What do you need to know beforehand? Which departments, organizations should you contact? So here we thought, first of all, of course, we said already the HR department of the local country is a very good point, starting point. Then does she have a diversity contact in the country she is moving to? Then we have also, is there a local employee LGBT network? Because sometimes you need not only official messages and information, something behind it. Then also I would talk to the new future manager, but only if I agreed it with Anna. So if Anna agrees, I will also help her with talking with her new manager. Then exactly the Chamber of Commerce, we said it's also important to sit here, to put here. Then I would suggest her to inform herself if there is a local NGO for LGBT topics. Then also I will help her to get in touch with immigration lawyers, which means HR maybe has some contacts for her. I will help her to get those contacts. Then we have the third question, which would be that was a bit more difficult question because it was more about feelings. So how do you decide for yourself whether it is the right decision of Anna to leave Austria? How do you evaluate the situation without being guided by negative preconceptions? Here we said, I would help her to get all the information that she needs, because at the end it's her decision. We said also it's difficult as manager to let her leave. Maybe I don't want her to leave, but still it's very important that she takes the decision, the last decision. So facts and information. If she accepts and if it doesn't work, I will, as her manager, try that for her it's still possible to come back, probably in a similar job if her job is not there anymore. So exactly, she has to consider a plan B in case things really go wrong. I will suggest her to consider a plan B. And the last but not least, for us also very important, it doesn't matter which decision she takes, we will support her, which means we are not in the position to say it's a good or bad idea, because at the end it's she who has to make her decision, and for her is the right decision what she takes at the end, we said. So That's from our part, and I will hand over now directly to Trilona with the last case study, the last position.
Thank you so much, Heide.
You're welcome.
In our work stream, Straight Allies, I counted, I think, around 30 participants, maybe even more, but I was too concentrated. So the participation was really brilliant and amazing. And now let me share our results with you. We had easier questions, but of course, then we had enough time for discussing this. So our first question was, how can you help Anna to make the right decision? We came up that everything is here important, but to have a checklist on like what's the first thing you would do is, of course, the legal situation, especially regarding marriage, how it is there. Other communities to talk, like friends, connection, the country you want to go, and also to check the kindergarten, the psychologist, and the environment in general. With the second question, what should she reach out to? Or who should she reach out to? Here we had the local LGBTI groups, also outside the company, to contact the firm, especially the direct management, and address the topic and also her thoughts on like what it is about. And of course, the social media groups like Facebook, LinkedIn groups are very useful. And last but not least, we had the last question. Maybe you can go more down, Heide, thank you. What is your responsibility as her coworker or also straight coworker? Of course, to be supportive, open-minded. Very important point, don't assume from the beginning that heterosexuality is the norm. Be aware of unconscious bias and address any discrimination. As you can see, in total, we all and the participants were putting so much effort here. Thank you again to all the participants. And I now give my word back to our great moderator, Gerhard.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing these results, and thank you everyone for your active participation in the work streams. If you are now sad that you could not participate in all the streams, which I believe it could be the case, let me inform you that you will receive the results of all the work streams, so they will be sent to you after the event. So now we are almost at the end of this great event, and it's really a pleasure for me to hand over back to you, Astrid Van Wilhelm from Pride Biz Austria, for your closing words.
Thank you very much, Gerhard. Well, this event was really special for us in any case, as for the first time we managed to spread the word, no matter where you work or what you wear. You were able to listen, to discuss, to share your experiences, and I'm sure there were interesting bits and pieces that you will be able to implement into your organization. In any case, please remain part of this highly engaged community. Our aim is to make everybody understand the value of LGBTI diversity, the value of diversity management in general, of course, and to allow every person to bring his and her full potential into work, without fear of mobbing, without fear of discrimination, and without concerns concerning regarding the career path. We want to be LGBT plus people become as visible and valued as everybody else. And for now, thank you very much for participating, and I hand back to Gerhard.
Thank you very much. Also from my side, thanks everybody helping to make this event happen, and have a good afternoon and good evening.